Hello, everyone. This is Green Schools Part 2, Benefits and Cost, presented by GBRI with instructor Craig Schiller. This is the course slide that GBCI gives us for every course that's pre-approved through them. Here you'll see the title of the course, Green Schools 2, Costs and Benefits, brought to you by GBRI, the Green Building Research Institute, the approval date at the bottom, as well as the course ID. On the right side, you'll see that it's pre-approved for 2 CE hours, either general or BD&C specific, and the recommended the recommended category is project surrounding and public outreach. This is the second course in a 2-part series by GBRI Senior Research Associate Craig Schiller, which explores green schools in depth. Part 2, Cost and Benefits, will look at the premiums on green features for schools and at their benefits, both in terms of economic return on investment and the impacts of these interventions on student performance and engagement. Without any further ado, here's Craig.
All right, thank you, Jessica, very much. If everyone can hear me okay, then I'll proceed. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Craig Schiller. I have been working with GBRI for about 1.5 years now. I have a master's in sustainable design from Carnegie Mellon University, where I focus primarily on green schools, very sustainable green schools that are being used as teaching tools, and the Living Building Challenge. So these are my focus and my passion. So I was very excited when GBRI asked me to do a course on green schools. Because it's such a passion of mine, I wanted to split it up into 2 sections. Last week we did school design and focus on design elements. This week we're going to focus on the benefits of those designs and some of the costs. So there is a lot of information in this course. I do apologize for that. I'll try to go quickly, but there's a lot to know, and it's a passion of mine, so I was very enthusiastic with some of the information. Okay, so with that being said, for an introduction, I just want to go over some brief numbers of our nation's schools, just to put schools in general into perspective. Our country has nearly 100,000 public K-12 schools. That does not include any private or charter schools. That's all public. And they take up about 6.6 billion square feet. So we have almost 7 billion square feet of publicly funded schools in this nation. And in 2009, our public school district spent about $50 billion in operation and maintenance. 80 billion of that number, so it's about 10.5%, about 15%, is for utilities alone. In another report in 2009 said that there was $271 billion worth of deferred maintenance needed to bring our schools into good repair. So it's about $5,450 per student needed to update our schools to what we would consider a comparable building value to a new construction. And the average age of construction is from 1959. So some of these numbers you may realize are most of our building stock. Houses, offices are outdated and probably need a lot of money to bring up to new construction. So what's the difference between those last few numbers, those last few points, and schools? The difference is our nation's schools has about 50 million students. And so a big part of this presentation is going to focus on that number, on the students themselves. I talked about last time, but for me, that's the difference between green schools or not. They're buildings. The main difference is that we have students that we are educating in those. So to go over some of the basic definitions of green schools, and again, this is from last time. They are less costly to operate than a conventional school. They are designed to enhance the learning and working environment. And they conserve important resources such as energy and water. So when you look at it, look at these 3 points alone, they seem great. Why wouldn't we build green? These are all beneficial to us in society. Why wouldn't we? A recent survey actually quantified why not. They asked industry professionals in a survey to explain what the discouraging factors of green construction were. And as you can see here, higher construction costs were the highest point, lack of awareness of benefits was the second, and the difficulty quantifying benefits was the third. In this presentation, I'm going to address all of those issues. So we want to make the green building industry as transparent and honest as possible, and through that, as you'll see through this course, we can actually address each of those different concerns. The energy savings for LEED is about 33% less energy for all LEED buildings. That is just a EUI calculation over average LEED buildings. And that comes from, and many say 40% or more. In fact, that number is increasing on the average. And that comes from building orientation, natural daylighting, more efficient building envelopes, and HVAC systems that are more efficient and smaller sizes. So that is the overall energy benefit. A great example of that, this is just a project profile page that I really like these because LEED does a good job of just quantifying a handful examples of a particular project. In this case, this is in Fort Collins, Colorado. This building is 60% more energy efficient. It has about almost 1,200 annual water savings, and zero cost additional for achieving LEED. That same study, to go to some of the other school districts, let's see, we have the Seattle and Fort Collins school districts. The annual test scores with students with the most daylighting increased 7 to 18%. Sorry, they had 7 to 8% higher test scores. So in these two school districts, instead of having a beginning of the year test and an after the end of the year test, they just had an end of the year test, and they compared that test from students in the same grade in classrooms with little sunlight and a lot of sunlight. This image I showed you before, this is Fossil Ridge High School. This is in Fort Collins, and one of the schools that they studied. It is an iconic and very well used example of green school design, partially because when you look at it, it's a semicircle facing the south to maximize daylight. There's operable windows. There's solar panels that are acting as shading devices, so you don't get direct glare. When you see this school, you instantly know that there's something going on that's unique, not only with the design, but with renewable energy. That gets into environmental literacy, which we'll talk about at the end, and buildings as a teaching tool. The overall net impact of a green building, of a green school, right? Any green building, any green school will have a positive impact, a net impact that is decreased from a traditional building. Less water use, less waste use, less energy, less emissions, etc. Health and performance increases, attendance increases, teacher retention increases, positivity and happiness at the workplace increases. There are a lot of just health and performance benefits of green schools. And finally, what I spent the last little bit talking about, environmental literacy. That is not, as I said, that is not proven. I mean, there is no quantitative data on that, but we know instinctually, you and I both know that all the examples I've shown you have an effect on the students and are important. Green buildings are important in the industry, but more so are green behaviors of their occupants. You can have extremely green students, and some of the greenest schools I've ever seen have been in extremely ungreen buildings because they couldn't afford new green buildings, they couldn't afford any new building. But they put it so closely to their values that their students have a wonderful ethos for sustainability. So again, that environmental literacy is extremely important in my mind. I hope for you as designers and educators, you will focus that, right? You don't need a new green school to have environmentally literate students. You need passion and a good curriculum that ties it together. If you can tie that environmental literacy with the green building, you can have increased knowledge retention, increased excitement, increased understanding from the students because they can get their hands dirty with what you're trying to teach them.